Queen d5 was chosen, and then, oh man, did we have a time scramble? Queen b3, rook a2. Was there anything else besides e4 as we see Magnus back at the board now?
I think bishop takes b4.
Was still.
We mentioned it. This version is probably, I guess he wasn't sure about it, but it's probably a draw. Bishop b4, rook d to b2, queen takes d3, rook takes b4. The a pawn falls, but since black has a flexible structure, not the e pawn to e4, but the pawn to e5, I think he can just harass that f2 pawn and white's king and stop white from getting active with the rooks.
And one critical point, by the way, is bishop b4, rook a to b2 may look pretty enticing, but the problem is, as rook a to b2, you take the rook on d2.
Yep.
So you give up your queen right back for those two rooks, you get this pass pawn, you win the game. So yeah, of course, rook d to b2, as Fabian was saying, you just get the bishop, give up the knight, and you win the a pawn. So yeah, I mean, knight takes e4 is a hard move to criticize. Fabiano's rook c2, just keeping black stuck, right? You can't really move very easily for black. That's not that easy of a move to play, even though it's extremely understandable. And if you give Magnus one more minute on the clock, I think he could play rook to c2. But knight takes e4 seems so strong. You're taking a central pawn. You're leaving black with all of these isolated pawns on the board. And if you take that knight on e4, you then lose the a pawn and just lose the game on the spot. So that would just be a disaster. And
Just note, everyone, a simple idea like rook d4, rook f4, guards f2,
it's over.
a4
Completely.
falls, and white wins this easily.
Well, I think that we could we could pretty much figure out if rook d to c2 was actually a winning move or not. Because after rook d to c2, black's options are extremely limited. He only has basically two moves. One is f5, one is queen to b1. After f5, knight takes a4. I think black will probably take rook c3. Let's move the queen somewhere. Probably doesn't matter very much
D1
where.
or something.
Yeah. Rook take with the c rook. Black makes a waiting move, queen e1, for example. Queen f1. Rook to a5. King to g6. You have to defend that pawn. Now, let's say rook to b2. So,
You could teleport your rook to f4.
Yeah, I
That'd
don't
be
know
really
that. I
nice.
don't know that you
Yeah.
can win though.
well, which move do you make? f6? Okay, but you're going to get into Zugzwang, right? Rook b to a2.
Okay.
You can't move your king because rook takes f5, so you have to move your queen.
So queen d1, I guess.
Yeah, okay, now queen to d1.
As long as you're never threatening to go here, then I'm not in Zugzwang.
Well, let's play rook to a7.
Okay.
Okay, now rook to...
I see that eval bar be creeping, but I don't believe
But
it.
you want to
yet.
go full Nigel Short.
I'm going for
I'm
full
waiting
Nigel
for you to
Short
go
here.
f4, king f5, king
Hey,
f4.
don't you turn your back on the ocean or Nigel Short. I mean, those are two equally dangerous things depending on the right setting.
But that probably doesn't work, actually, because in a lot of these variations, white can take with the g pawn. So
Okay, but even if I don't, go Nigel. I'll let you play. Let you play white.
this looks very difficult to crack.
This
because-
might be a draw. I was thinking that with the rook on the 7th, you can create Zugzwang again. But rook to b7, king to h6, or rook to b2, king to h6.
Yeah, because if you're not on my f pawns, I can shuffle the king.
Yeah.
And if you are on the f pawns, then I can't, but I can go here. And the point
But
of
here you
one
can
is,
shuffle the king.
what?
Here you can shuffle the
Oh, and I can go to g7. You're right.
But if the rook is on a5, then the queen has to move.
The
and it goes,
closest you were was here, though. This.
yeah, it goes to d1. It has to go to d1.
Well, it's white to move first, so
Yeah, let's say rook a2, queen to d1. And the point is that,
I feel like rook a2 is the wrong one. What if you go to c2 so that you keep this open? So now my queen.
oh, that's...
Yeah, I think. But I can go to e1 now, and you still can't go up. That's the difference.
And if rook to d5, then queen to f1.
Yeah, and I'm still.
And now, wait, let's try another one now. Rook to b2.
You know, so if I go to e1, now you have king g2. Aha,
Yeah.
the rook guards d1, preventing.
And then
perpetual.
king g2, and it's over. Rook goes to f5.
Yeah. If this happens, king g2.
Rook to f5, rook to b5 takes f5, and
Yep.
and if f4, white just plays g takes f4.
Okay, but hold on. So I was helping you out there to break down my own blockade. I'm not going to help you anymore, Fabi.
Well,
Okay,
then
what's-
I have no chance of winning this.
Well, you have no chance again't me. Your move.
Yeah, rook to d5. I think the d5, the rook on
this
d5.
was a really key point.
You can't go to d1 anymore. You have to go to e1 or c1, and then rook to b5 comes.
Again, everyone, the queen wants to stay hitting the f-pawn. If the queen is not hitting the f-pawn, the rooks are doubled, and this pawn will be captured defending. If the king ever moves off, the f-pawn falls. So the only way to maintain this is queen here, but that allows the king to help himself, big fella,
This is resigns.
and I'm frozen, just like Elsa.
I always appreciate a good Frozen reference.
I'm trying to figure out a way for like, even if I could pass the move here,
Yeah.
so that I understand you're going to rook b5, then I'll play f4 and hope that I have some kind of.
But I was thinking about that. You get mated. Well,
Not
maybe,
so-
maybe not so quickly. Yeah.
but
You
I-
might have queen to e2 to g4,
Yeah, a little perpetual.
but
But I don't know what my waiting move is here. That's
Okay,
the
so hold
problem.
on. So where are we back at? This is king g6. So king g6, rook b2.
I think this one is winning. Like that's my feeling.
So not rook a2. The improvement is rook to d5.
Yeah.
Which I like a lot.
Maybe black had to keep the queen on d1 in general just to stop rook to d5.
So rook d5. Can we just go for it really quickly here? If I play queen c4,
Rook b5.
rook b5, and then I try f4.
Ah, yeah. A gf4, queen e2.
That's
Oh, Robert.
This is probably a draw.
Very nice.
Yeah.
You gain a tempo. Note that the rooks cannot come back to help, and the king not helping himself to a victory at least anymore because of the perpetual check. Well, if you go too far,
Just queen h.
queen h.
then just
Can you just
Go
take
here.
h4? Oh, this too, right?
Yeah, this
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
And if the king goes too far, then f2 falls.
yeah, okay.
But after queen c4, I just want to play rook to d1. We can play this one as slowly as we want. The queen can't get to f1 anymore. Now rook to d2, king g2. Very slowly we build up.
King g2, rook d2. Eventually, one of the rooks comes back, and the other one joins the
But
party.
then I'll have the same thing.
You have
Oh.
f4 at the end, even so. At the end of all those lines, you have f4.
No, but white can go for a checkmate. Rook to d7, rook b7. I don't want your f pawn. I wanted to play king g2, rook to d7.
Going
and
Bob Barker on this? You want the whole thing?
I want the whole
The
thing.
price is right.
Yep. Anyway, like, if this is not losing, it's super, super difficult to hold.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So rook d1, black. We'll just shuffle just to show when you're ready, you go here.
Or
Forget-
rook to d6.
Forget the pawn.
Maybe the f6 pawn is the real target.
Mm.
I mean,
So what we're establishing for those wondering was whether or not Magnus Carlsen perhaps had a winning opportunity with the brilliant suggestion from our own Fabiano Caruana, rook to c2, sort of freezing black, and we were trying to figure out is this endgame winning for white with f5, where you sacrifice the knight for the pawn, you regain the bishop, and it seems indeed that
Just miserable for both.
there is a way to coordinate. It takes a little bit of shuffling, but eventually
Yeah.
this idea here is that's just some instructive stuff right there.
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
Flushing the queen out so that
Yeah.
you can then move the pieces
Yeah.
on your terms.
Preventing the
Sure.
queen from having any which square that would have a perpetual.
Oh, well, it
I
looks-
think that Magnus saw the idea of rook dc2, but didn't realize he was down to like 20 seconds. So we can understand.
Mhm.
He didn't realize that knight takes a4 was a threat. And so he thought rook dc2, f5, and we wait. There's
Right.
nothing to do. But knight takes a4. If he had seen that, I think he would have played rook dc2 for sure.
well, it looks like in the game, even though we didn't get that variation, he took an e4. He did bring a rook to c2. And we were talking about bishop f8, pawn to a3, and black better